Hi, I'm Carrie Penny, and on this episode of Secret Heart Broadcasting, Palma Cafolla. She is a perfumer, a storyteller, a florist, a magician, a beautiful soul. And if you are looking for evidence of magic in this world or need a little lift to your own spirit, this episode is for you. Hello and welcome to Secret Heart Broadcasting. I am so excited because my guest today is perfumer, florist, and creator of beauty in the world, Palma Cafolla. I hope I'm saying Cafolla correctly, Palma. Ours is a story of like meeting like, I think. And from the moment I met her, certainly I liked Palma. She sizzles with creativity, and not in a way that makes you feel smaller or less than, but in a way that lifts you up and makes you think, oh, I wonder what's possible. She is the kind of person I would have loved to have had as a friend when I was younger, because I'm sure we would have discovered much magic in the world. But I'm grateful to have discovered her as a friend when I'm older, which I did several years ago. I wandered into her beautiful shop in Victoria, BC, Canada, and I was met with this curtain of scent and beauty and flowers. And today I hope that we'll talk about the importance of all five senses, including the sense of smell. Palma has studied perfumery, and I'm sure we'll have lots to say about scent. But first, let me say, Palma, what a pleasure it is to welcome you to the virtual Secret Heart Broadcasting Studio. And I'm so glad we are finally able to have a conversation. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Carrie. I'm so delighted to be here this morning as well. It's I've been so looking forward to this, our chat.
Mm-hmm. Well, it was strange because I really just wandered off the street. Palma has a beautiful shop too now in Victoria called Zingaro, and there was just this magical sense outside. And as I wandered in, as I said in the intro, there's flowers and beauty and perfume and little accoutrements. These earrings I'm wearing today, I bought at Zingaro. So just magical, wonderful little things, very nature-based, and highly unusual. It was like, what is this magic that I have stumbled upon? I know you're from Ireland, so of course I want to talk about perfuming and the shop and how you got here, but maybe we can kind of dial back a bit. I know you were born in Ireland, and I know somehow you ended up in Victoria, BC, Canada. Do you want to just tell me a little bit about how you grew up in Ireland and just maybe looking back, was it a magical kind of place? I think there is definitely a magic to Ireland.
There definitely is. I had, growing up in Ireland, for me, it was very, I came from a background of an Italian father and an Irish mother. So it was very crossed. And in those days in Ireland, like, anyone outside Ireland was almost odd, right? Because we didn't get very many visitors, back then. Now it's totally different. So, my sister and I would have definitely been more unusual in school, say, because going to school, you would have to learn the Irish language. And, I went to school with the nuns. And your roll call every morning would be like, in your Irish name. But they never had a name for me or my sister, right? So it was kind of everyone else would be like Siobhan Ní Murachua Sanam Dum, whereas mine would be Palma Cafolla, because there was no changing of it. So it was kind of always, that was one thing I always remember growing up in Ireland, that it was just very, we were a little bit different, right? But I always loved that, My mother was definitely, I would say, totally eccentric, which also was very wonderful. She adored her garden. And that's where my love affair of the garden started, because she came from a big family. My father, very old school Italian, where the women were, the princesses in the home. Like, he wouldn't let my mother do anything that was non-feminine. You can't take the bins out or do anything like that. His three girls in the house was the way he treated us. And he definitely did. Whereas my mother would just spend her days in the garden. And where we lived on the grounds of this really old church. And it was very wonderful because we had the church was actually on our property, so to speak. So you had that old church as a background, and then my mother's garden, right? And she wouldn't let us. She was very protective of my sister and I, and we weren't ever like allowed. We didn't really have friends coming after school. She'd always pick us up, and she used to always say to my sister and I, "You don't need anyone. You've got your sister." And it was kind of, I don't know whether it was a hindrance later on in years, which it definitely, I'd say it was. But my days as a child would be spent after school out in the garden with my dog Dino. And that's how we spent our days. So I, being the inquisitive child, would be turning stones, looking for little animals and insects and all of these things in the garden. I, and my sister can verify this, would be pulling the roses and putting them in jars and mixing with water and talcum powder to see what essence I could make. I don't know what I was doing, but there was obviously something there at that stage. And that's kind of, I spent my days in that garden and I loved it. I would, catch bumblebees and try and see would they do stuff for me and different things. It was magical for me. It was always magical. And then my grandmother's garden, she was the culinary Italian, and her garden was all herbs that she couldn't, when she moved to Ireland, you couldn't get them in Ireland. So she had to grow them. She'd bring the seeds back from Italy and grow all her herbs that she'd need, like basil and flat leaf parsley and artichokes and all the things that the Italians cooked with, right? So her garden was filled with that. And her garden to me was aromatic, edible. So that was the two. And that was my childhood pretty much until I hit my teenage years, and then, different things happened. But yeah, that was pretty much my childhood.
I had you almost described like a scene in a painting. I'm almost smelling the like fennel even. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
anise something. Yeah. So you had this deep appreciation of nature and beauty and scent even as a young child.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
did you ever spend time in Italy, or were you always in Ireland?
No, Italy was the summers. So we would spend our days in Ireland because we were at school. And then once school was done, we would go to Italy for the summers. And then my sister and I, imagine this, we hated it because we were brought to where my father's village was, which was a tiny little village off the Amalfi Coast. And all my sister and I would see was old ladies dressed in black, right? And we'd have to spend our summers there with all the old people. And we were so unhappy, but now it's the most magical place in the world. And my father ended his days back in his old village, and he has but he still has the house there, but he passed a little bit ago. So, yeah, it was very, we had very mixed cultures. Like it was definitely, half our life was Irish, half our life was Italian. And my mother definitely gravitated more towards the Italian lifestyle as well, because she loved style and fashion and was intrigued by all of that. So she used to love to go to Italy and leave us probably in the little village and take a trip to Rome and do her shopping or whatever, right?
Oh, so you had style too. Well, of course you did, because that makes complete sense. So you're having this growing up and kind of fitting in, not fitting in, but finding this nature place. What happens when you're a teenager? And I, was the mother of a teenage daughter, and I can attest to the lived experience of, for me as the mother, it went from magical fairies and wonder to like, oh, Lord, give me the strength.
Yeah, well, what happened with me, my mother was very strict, and expression was not a thing that you used, right? You would you almost suppressed because you did as you were told, and that was it, and there was no questions asked, right? And that's the way we were. I hated school, Kerry. I was like I thought out of school I'd never get it. I would be daydreaming all day long looking out the window, and I was terrible in school, like so much so that I spent my first few years in school terrified. Um, and I never learned. I copied off the girl who sat beside me, and they found it out like about 4 years later because I was so quiet. they never knew. And then I was sent to this wonderful nun called Sister Cecilia. She saved me. She took me out of that class, and it was always a stigma to have to go to Sister Cecilia because it meant that you were like, back in those days, the word dunce was used, and that's what it was, right? And it was whatever. And I remember going to Sister Cecilia's. She took me by the hand, and I was in tears. And she brought me into her little schoolroom, and there was just one desk and her desk, and that was it. And I just fell in love with this nun. She just taught me so much. She brought me how to spell and learn in a different way. And she took so much time, and she effort with me. And every morning I used to get so excited to go to school to get her desk set up for her and, get it all ready. And I'd be waiting at the desk for her to come. And she must have been, to me, she seemed like a giant, but she was a very tall, big nun, and she was old, and I'd hear her hobbling up the corridor, the marbled floor, the old school floors, and she'd come in, and there she'd be. And that went on for a few years, 2 years. And I remember crying going into Sister Cecilia, and I remember crying leaving her and having to go back to the classroom. But the first week I went back to the classroom, I got 10 out of 10 of my spellings. And like, my mother was so ecstatic. And I just remember, like, and I'll never forget what she did for me, that. But what she did for me was she actually, she helped my spirit, right? Because I was scared. I didn't like being there. I felt afraid to put my hand up and different things like that. So she helped my spirit. And what she kind of taught me was, it's okay to be me, and there's other ways to get through this, navigate through this life. And because I never thought I was ever going to be able to spell or write or do any of those things, and being left-handed in a nun school as well was something that you were punished for back then. It was like, because you're writing, you'd be doing calligraphy, and like, you try to fountain penning with like left hand, and different things like that. But she actually just taught me it was okay to be me. And I held that, right? And, I didn't tell anyone else that, but I kind of held it in. So my spirit was like alive again inwardly, right? And, and then I got through my teenage years and kind of left the flowers and found probably boys and, things as you do when you're a teenager, right? And then at 17, I was like, okay, I'm out of here. And I left school, and I got the boat to England, and my first job was in a beautiful flower store in London, and as a trainee floral designer. And that's kind of when I got back into the flowers as a young girl.
Oh, I just am having a moment about Sister Cecilia. God bless her. It's so important to have people who can, especially with creative children, to just see them. Oh, I love that. All right, so when we pick up in Act Two, our heroine, Palma, is working in a busy London floral shop. So were you thinking at that time, I'm loving the work, I want to have a business, and at 17, you're so young also.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So now there was the demons were coming back because we were in a very, very high-end flower emporium, right in the heart of Mayfair in London. And it was, he was very famous, my mentor, very, very big in the flower world, right? And we used to do all the hotels and around central London, right? So Valerie was the lady who was, there was myself and a New Zealand girl. We were the two trainees, and Valerie was the one who was minding us, so to speak, right? And like, we weren't allowed, speak the common names of flowers. It always had to be the botanicals. And the reason being was that was their given name, and do not attempt to use baby's breath. You know, it had to be gypsophilia and birds of paradise, strelitzia. So like it was drilled into us. So again, this fear was put back into me again, because she was quite the piece of work, right? So I'd be learning every night the names of the botanicals, and so we'd be going around all the central London hotels, the big ones, you know, and tidying up after the florists, you know, basically going in, taking all the old, watering them, and you know. But my big treat was Wednesday in the Ritz. Uh, that was my day where I had to go to the fourth floor, and there was always a tea dance on there. So I'd finish doing my job, and they'd never be able to keep a very tight eye on you. You could, you know, take a half hour here and there. And I used to sit at the very back, and it was always like seniors would go to, there was an afternoon tea dance, and all the florals would be done, and the pianist was there. And every Wednesday, he was a lovely gentleman, and he used to play the piano, and I'd sit back and I would say to myself, one day I'm going to afford afternoon tea at the Ritz, because I used to just sit looking at them all, you know, and it was just magical, right? So beautiful. It was such a beautiful old building, and it was gorgeous. And that was, you know, that's when my dreaming started, right? And that always logged in my head, was that moment. And I would go, and I was in a bed sit in London, you know, a tiny little room in an old 7-story house, you know, and set in London. And it was just, yeah, it was a beautiful, wonderful experience. So then my hunger started. So the couple of things happened at that stage. You know, my hunger was right. I'm done now. My father's family was always in business. My grandmother, who's also called Palma, was the I guess the rock of the whole family, and she drove everyone. Like they were in the food business in Dublin, all the you know, through their time there, and she was always the one, you know, keeping everyone on track and whatever. So I'm like, okay, I'm done working for someone. I could see then I had a talent for this floral designing, and I'm like, I really like where this is going. And I thought, okay, I'm going to learn as much as I can and train as much as I can and be the best I can. And I did that. And then I moved back to Dublin when I was 22. And I opened up my first flower store at 22.
Oh,
Yes.
okay. I have to say, the seeding of that dream about I want to be able to afford this beautiful afternoon tea, dreamed in a place that was very beautiful and fragrant and magical. Like
Yes.
that's a real potent kind of planting of a dream in one's life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so at 22, was it in Dublin or was this outside of Dublin?
It was just outside Dublin in a place called Malahide.
Yes, of course.
Yes. And my then, well, he wasn't my husband quite then, but he was my son's father. We were just about to get married, and he knew the gentleman who owned the property, because at the time, like Malahide was a very sought of after area. And, you know, he said, look, take a chance on it. He gave us a great deal. And I'm like, I can do this, right? So we put every pennies we had into it, right? And the day I opened up the store, there was 65 Irish pounds left in the bank account, because no bank would look at me at 22. They wouldn't give me a loan. He actually laughed me out of the bank chair. He said, go away. Don't be ridiculous. So I thought, okay, I'm going to show you. So I went, and my uncle Paddy, he was a fantastic carpenter and all that. He made everything, like he built it from scratch, from the ground up for me. And we did it on pennies. But the one thing I knew, flowers will always conceal something ugly. And it did. So the flowers hid what I needed them to hide, and we showed what I could show. And 65 Irish pounds left in the bank on the first day of opening. I'm going, if I do not get any customers today, I am screwed. This is it. It's over. And I did. And every penny went back in and back in and back in, and so on and so forth. And I worked 7 days a week. My dad helped me, everyone helped and built it up. But there was still that niggling thing, and that's where the scent came in next.
Okay, so you got married quite young then too and became a mother quite young.
Yes, I got married then at the year after I opened up the store. And the year after that, I had Liam, my firstborn. So it was, yeah, it was pretty intense, and luckily I had like my beautiful mother. She used to look after Liam for me when I'd go to work. So she used to take him as a brand new baby. Like I literally came out of the hospital and went back to work, cesarean section, straight back to work. No, like you're not supposed to drive for 6 weeks. 2 days later, I'm in the car. That was the way I rocked my life. Looking back now, would I have done it differently? Probably, but probably not.
Well, I mean, and in the moment, you are responsible for your own future. And I know, isn't it amazing when we look back at our lives and think, oh, I did that?
I know, like I literally got out of the hospital. I was in the hospital with Liam, and it was Valentine's Day. And I'm sitting there going, oh my God, I'm going to lose my little empire. It's just how am I going to manage, And I had a girl in there and she barely knew what she was doing. And I'm like, I'm ruined. It's over. And I thought out of the hospital, I'd never get, to get back to work. So what that told me was like, I wasn't, I won't say I wasn't maternal, but I definitely my mind was always on other things, right? I had children because at that time in Ireland, that's what you did, right? Now, like my two boys, it's like they're the most magical thing in my life, right? But it was kind of like I wasn't very good. My sister was like mother, earth with the children. I was like, mine had colic and it was hell. Like they cried for 6 months and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the worst mother ever. Why won't this
Oh,
child stop crying, right? So again, despair hit again in Palma Cafolla's life. Here we go again. But then once they got to toddlers, everything was wonderful, but it was definitely, there was always something pulling on me, right? Always something pulling on me. So it kind of, it left me where, I'm kind of going, I'm going to get this right. I'm going to get this right. And I never did get it right. But you know what? I guess that's what life is, right?
yeah. I think there's a certain age where you have to just accept the imperfection, as even that word is a bit jarring for me to say. You have to just
Yeah.
accept what my mother might say, what is. Just accept
Yeah.
what it is. Yeah. So the shop actually turned into something quite successful in Malahide.
Yes, it was
Yeah.
quite the store. Pulling back a little bit, when the nose came about then was somewhere in there where it always bothered me that nothing in the perfume world smelled like what I stood on, touched and felt on a daily basis. And that was my next thing that was really, challenging up here for me. And I delved and delved and delved, and I'm like, this just doesn't seem, what's missing. And then when I opened up the world of perfume, then I realized that everything that was in the department stores was all synthetic and nothing was real. So that's when my next project within the flower store, within the children, within all of that became the studying of the perfume.
So, how does one study perfumery? Because I think of it as ancient houses with, families of, normally men who are the nose, who are famous for their ability to smell and blend. But I think of it as a very old art and not something contemporary.
That's 100%. You're exactly right there, Kerry. The flower is always connected within here for me. And with the perfume, it was the exact same connection, but a different interpretation, right? And exactly as you said, the noses, right? Because I shied away even when I was 17. It always intrigued me. It was the scent, the flowers, the scent, the flowers. What is going on? Why? There's a misconnection, right? But the nose, the word nose, and the French and the all of that scared me, and it left me where I'm like, well, it's hereditary. It's passed down through the family. But honestly, I firmly believe, like the flowers, you either have that connection or you don't. And I feel somewhere in my lineage, somewhere in my life, there was that connection way back or something, because it comes to me too fluidly. And I don't know why. And I honestly believe we're given gifts in this life. And I was given a gift, and it my higher power, that's where I feel my gift came from, because I don't know why or how I have it. I don't know how I can even do it, but it comes to me, and I don't know. But at that stage I was braver. And I was like, okay, now I'm going to challenge you. And that's what I did.
I love that you trusted your heart. You did not betray your heart by saying,
No.
"Oh, I am but a humble Irish woman at 22. What do I know of the nose?" That you said you were braver then, but I love that you were just constantly listening and readjusting what you knew to be true about yourself.
Yeah, and that's what it was. And I knew there was something there, but I knew I had to unlock it, because, I always think with people in this world, there's so many people that were put here, and we're all given something, every one of us. And, it's what a wasted, shame on you not to use what you're given, because we have to give it to other people, and other people have to find what they've gotten. That's the beauty of this world, right? So it's kind of like it's our job, right? And I knew there was something that I wasn't clicking into, that just the picture wasn't complete. And then when I started the world of perfume, it was like, aha, now I see. Now I connect the two.
I love what you just said because I think it is so important to share the gifts, who we are in the world, who we know ourselves to be. That I think maybe that's why we're so attracted to each other when we first met. But how? Okay, so how does one go to perfume school?
Well, we go and we study the Institute of Perfumery. I had been to Grasse many times
And
as
Grasse is in France,
in
in the
France.
famous
Yeah,
hub of
yes.
perfumery.
So that's where they are, and the beauty of there is, like, there's a lot of botanical schools there. So and I knew that's where I wanted to be, because I knew that's where the essence was going to be for me, like through chemistry and synthetics. Most certainly was, like, of course it's all chemistry, but botanical chemistry and then synthetic chemistry is, it's two different bodies, right? But they do merge. And as we go through this world and the perfumes, they have to merge sometimes, because there's certain ingredients you just cannot use anymore, and there is, allergens and all these different things that we have to be very aware of in this industry. So, there's certain ingredients like musks and civets and all these different things that are taboo now. You can't use them, they're illegal. So you have to find the natural alternative. Or sometimes, I'm not I for me, like, to perfume is it's about the scent, right? It's what it evokes in us, right? And for me, it's mostly all about the botanicals, because that's what evokes most for me, and when you connect with them, there's no going back. You open the door and you close it, and you never look back. You just keep going down that world, and that's what it is. So it's really, again, it's like, I always find perfuming, for me, and studying perfuming is like, it's a form of, like, being an artist, right? So it's how you Are you contemporary? Are you abstract? Are you, you know, Dutch masters? What type of artist are you?
What type of artist are you?
For me, I am definitely historical. it's all about the old masters. It's about delving into history, delving into, I love people as well. But if I ever perfume for a person, I'll always delve right back into the, it's not about, and this is who I am, this is how it speaks to me. No, I want to know the nitty gritty, like what happened, the darkness, the light, the everything, your heritage, who was your grandmother, where did you come from, all of those things. And to me, it's about dragging the history through my perfume, is the type of perfumer I am.
I love that, dragging the history through my perfume. I'm sort of torn between talking more in depth about your perfume, which way I want to do, because the other thing, when I walked into your shop those years ago and started smelling what you were making, it was so um, ancient and human and real. And I think the first perfume of yours I bought was called Basilica, which, and you create these stories behind your scents. I mean, it's not just like, this one's called whatever, there's yeah, you tell a story. You don't just walk into your shop and be like, and come back in 5 minutes. You're like, okay, this is the story of. Was that conscious? Creating a story about a scent? I mean, it is like listening to you um, weave a spell almost.
Yeah, perfume to me is literature, right? So I can't create a perfume unless I have a story to go with it. So for me, like I could be still for years and no perfume will come. And then all of a sudden, boom, there's something happens. And I just want to sit and write. And then I need to go to the place where it's happening, or sometimes it's a moment that happens. And I'm like, I'm going to delve in, like I could be in a museum and I could see a statue, and she could look very interesting and beautiful. And I'll read, it could be a saint, and I'll read about that saint and I'm delve into their life. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm in your world. And now I'm smelling your world. And that's how it comes. But it's funny because Basilica is actually one of the perfumes in the collection that's extremely close to my heart. And it actually is a lot about my transition from leaving Dublin and the pain and landing here. So it's a biggie.
That's a beautiful segue, because somehow you go from this life you created supported by your family and your mom taking care of the kids and the support of your sister and a booming business. And then what? You end up in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan?
Mm-hmm.
Tell me more.
Forward the reel. So the perfume studies are done and the shops are booming. I now have a few shops now in Dublin. I now have my second son and life is good. And then I get a divorce, and then I meet my second husband in Dublin, and then all of a sudden he has his own business, I have my own business, everything is like running, and then crash. We Ireland crashes. We hit this ginormous economic crash. That was in 2009. So I'm scrambling. And like what happened was the banks, the government, all of them, there was no capping on anything at that stage in Ireland, Kerry. So your house would probably start off at like 200,000. They valued it at 1.5 million, and they're giving you loans on this, right, on equity. And they're getting you to buy properties and invest your pension here. And all the advisors are advising all these little business people like me. And then we get this crash and we lose everything, like everything. And like my pension is gone. I have properties that are now worth pennies and they're in negative equity. My businesses where they are in high scale areas, so that, basically now these people are, out of jobs or they're losing everything. Nobody's buying luxury. So we tank, and in every which way. And by 2012, I was done. I couldn't scramble anymore. I couldn't see a way out of the hole. I'm like, this is just getting bigger and bigger. And my husband, who's in construction, he got a chance of a job in Saskatoon. And he said, I'm going to have to take this job. And I'm going to go, you're going to have to go. And he went. And he went in the April. And in the November, I followed him.
Oh, what a wonderful time to come to Saskatoon in November.
It was perfect. I thought I had died, and I left my two boys back in Dublin. But this is where Basilica hits, right? So just before I leave Dublin, it was 2012, and you'll notice the Roman numerals of Basilica is 2012, right? There's Basilica, and it has these Roman numerals of that number. And just before I left, I took Christian, who's my youngest, to Paris. And he was doing an art. It was like our final together because I had to leave them. They were in school. I left them with their dad. I know. And I had to go to Canada, set up home, and then they were going to follow straight after school, right? The school, like in the June. And Christian and I went to Paris, and he was just so into like the Louvre and different. He was 12. So this is, remember, 12, 12. It was all the numbers, right? And we went to the Louvre and did all of that. We went to Disneyland and we walked the streets of Paris together. And it was the most magical time with my son, but it was also the most painful because I was leaving him, right? It makes me feel like it's so upsetting, right?
Yeah.
So I remember this day, and he used to love Quasimodo, right? The movie, right? And Esmeralda. And I said, we'll go to Notre Dame. He said, I don't want to go to Notre Dame. Like I said, you know what? We've done everything you wanted on this trip. I want to go to Notre Dame, right? And I said, and we're going. So I remember there was at the time you could put the lock on the things in Paris. You
On
can
the bridges?
put a lock on the bridges, yeah.
Yes, yeah.
And I put a lock for myself and Christian, and we put it on, and then we went to Notre Dame. And when we walked in, something happened. I just walked in, and I was encased in this building, and so was he. And the gargoyles, the candles, the books, the walls, the crypts, everything. We spent hours and hours. And when we left, there was a little cafe across the road called Esmeralda's. We sat outside. He had hot chocolate and pancakes, and I had coffee. And he said, Ma'am, that was probably one of the most magical experiences I think I've ever had. And I'm going to keep it with me forever. And I remember the smell, everything, right? And then moving forward, I left. I came to Canada, and then we'll revisit Basilica in a few years' time.
There is something just profoundly renting of the heart to leave your child or have to. Yeah, yeah, I really am. I feel that too. So now you're in Saskatoon in November with this rent in your heart, and uh, like how I can't honestly, hearing the details of this story, I don't know what gets you going in the morning. That's a lot.
So I'm there, and I'm like, okay, now I'm in survival mode. We're in a rented house, right? Because we're in a rented house. That's what life dished us at that stage. And my children are in Dublin, and I feel like my life has fallen down around me. And I go to work for a lady who has a flower shop in Saskatoon. And I met this magical woman, and she carried me through my pain, I have to tell you, over there. And I would go there. Bear in mind, I hadn't worked for anyone in 18 years. So this is like, thank God it was her, right? And I'd come home at night and I'd cry, and I'd go to work and I'd come home and I'd cry, and I'd go, where is this life going? My children come in June and it's going this way and that way and so on and so forth. And then I'm like, okay, the perfume. The June came, the winter started to come around, and I'm like, I'm ready. This, that, it came to me. And that's when I took all my books, all my studies, my oils, everything came. And I started back finishing where I left off. And that's what happened. It was the stillness of Saskatoon in the depth of winter that gave me, I guess, the reverence and the grace to see what I needed to see at that moment. And over the next 5 years, it gave me that time to create, to work. I sat at that desk until 3 a.m. I would get up in the middle of the night. I'd go to a formula. I'd go back to it. I'd put it down. I'd go back in. I'd go out. I'd go in. I'd go out. And then I had already got formulas set from when I was studying previous, like Requiem, the one that we also spoke about. I don't know whether, have you got Requiem, Kerry? I don't
I
know.
do have Requiem, yeah. Palma for those, yeah, Palma has a line of perfume, so I'll just say that here.
So there was certain ones, the beginner ones, right? The big Requiem was the very first, right? But then Basilica came in, the Requiem came in kind of painish, but Basilica came in the true transitional pain. And you're probably now going to know where the story of Basilica goes back to. It goes back to Notre Dame. That's why it's called Basilica. And at that stage, it was during COVID. And my son had gone back to Dublin for the summer, but he couldn't come back. He was stuck in Ireland because, you know, the way
Oh
nobody.
my.
Yes. So he, at that stage, decided that he wanted to stay in Ireland. And we always said, his father and I, wherever the boys want to be, we will always, they'll either be with you or me, but they will never feel that they should be anywhere but with you or me. You know, like never guilt them or any, like they had to be wherever their heart needed to be. And they always needed to feel that they could be with one or the other parent and no pain involved, right? So Christian said, hey, but there was a girl involved, so we won't go into that. So he said, I want to stay here with dad. And I'm going, okay. So it was coming up to his 21st birthday. And I had got this vision in my head that I wanted to create Basilica for him for that time.
Oh.
And it was about our time in Paris. And of course, the history of it's all about Notre Dame, right? It's all about Notre Dame. And I was near the finishing of it. He didn't know what I was doing. And he phoned me and he said, Ma'am, he said, Notre Dame's on fire. He said, the spear, and I'm going, you're kidding me, what? And I go on and there it is. And I'm like, oh my God. And he was devastated. I was devastated. And it was the time the fire was going on. And so then I went back and I'm like, I have to rewrite this a little bit. So, because I felt Notre Dame was going through pain itself in the bones of the cathedral, right? And so then some smoke went into the formula, you know, and different. That's it was picked and, you know, plucked and picked and plucked. And anyway, Basilica became, and it got sent to Christian, and it arrived on his 21st birthday.
Oh, that's so magical. There's so much of a story there because I would describe it as a very earthy, smoky perfume, but I knew none of this
Yeah,
backstory.
it's the bones of Notre
Yeah.
Dame, and actually on the original box, there's actually a poem which I'm sure if I delve into something, I'll find it, and it's a very beautiful poem, and it's about all of that. So
So, I mean, already your life is so very cinematic, but yet I meet you in Victoria. So something happens to kind of pluck you from the, and Saskatoon is my mom's family's from Saskatoon and outside of it. It's a hard climate. It's
Yeah.
hard to fit in there because if you're not from there, you're not from there.
Yeah.
And I love Saskatoon. It's a beautiful city of rivers, so I can imagine it's very evocative of Dublin, maybe.
Yeah.
Um, but then what? How do you get to Victoria?
So at that stage, I had done so much work with the perfumes. We were now like wholesaling the brand. It was like up and running as a wholesaling it to, department stores, and we went to New York, and like it was starting to get noticed, right? And but there was a misconnection. I could see people in North America, in Europe, people I feel understand perfume because it's in our heritage, right? We grow up with it, scent and different things like that. It's in our heritage. Whereas North America, it's not something that is connected to us here, right? People don't really understand the history of perfume. Where does it come from? Oh, it's these terrible smells that we should ban, right?
Uh,
That's people's vision of perfume here. And I felt I kept coming against these brick walls because when they'd smell them, they'd be like, oh, or oh, it doesn't smell like Coco Chanel. And I'm like, oh gosh, oh, we've got a problem here. So I really went into a moment of reflection, and I'm like, what am I doing here? Maybe I need to go back to Europe. My mother was sick and it was COVID and all of this was going on. And then try and sell wholesale perfume through COVID when nobody can go to shops and smell. So I'm like, okay, guess there's a change happening here now again. So my husband went to Victoria because he had worked there, and I had planned on probably going back to Dublin. And I said this to him, and he said, I think you need to come out here and have a look out here. And I'm going to come and then see. And I put my foot into Victoria on a snowy February
oh
day.
no. And there's never snow really in Victoria.
No,
It
it
doesn't
was
linger at all.
snowing hard. And he said, he said, I think you should have a shop again. And I'm going, I can't go there again. I'm done. He said, no. He said, I think you've something to tell and you've got to tell it. And this, without helping people understand perfume, it's never going to happen. You're going to have to start somewhere. And the flowers, because that's you connect the two together, right? And he said, so what would be your ideal shop? I said, heritage building, mezzanine floor, beautiful street. We're walking as we're talking, and then we just stand, and there's for lease sign outside the store on Johnson Street. And he said, what do you think of this one? I look in the window, mezzanine floor, heritage building, beautiful street. I said, one roadblock in the way and I'm out of here. And we didn't get one roadblock.
Oh, you
So
are a powerful manifester.
so we opened up on the 10th of June, smack bam in the middle of COVID. I feel like I'm that 22-year-old girl again, but I'm standing 20 odd years later in Victoria on my own in the shop again, like I was in Dublin, and ready to try and build this from the ground back up again. And it was COVID. And that's what I did.
It's a really fantastic oasis. And everyone feels welcome. You're not snooty at all, at all.
No, I think, I think our cloth, my grandmother used to always say, cut your cloth to suit your measure. And when you're given cloths of different sizes through this life, you learn to cut your cloth to suit your measure, right? And Palma in Dublin was definitely a young girl whose ego ran riot. And Palma here is a girl who's seen that ego is not her amigo. And I always said when I go through this store, when I put my key in the door, right? My boys used to always say to me, Mommy, the shop, you smell like the flower shop. Every time I'd put my key in the door in Dublin, I'd take this breath every morning, because it was a moment, and then it was gone. Because once the door opened, life came in, right? And it took all the essence away. And I would walk in the queen, right? When I go through my store here, I put my key in the door, the essence is there, and I say every morning, and it's a little prayer I say, I guess, every morning is, what do you need from me today? I am your servant, and give me my jobs. And you know what? That is the best way to enter my work in here in Victoria, because I don't know where I'm going to end up in this life or where I'm going to be. But when I keep that in my head, I feel it's better, because then I know that I've to be of service, right? This is my job. I have to be of service, because all of this nature, all of this beauty we're given in this world, like how do you show it, right? You don't show it with grandeur. You show it with, like, we've got this, like, look at it, And honestly, now I'm so blessed to actually have to do this every day, because it's such a beautiful thing to have. And it is a gift. So, and to be here in Victoria, of course, right?
Mhm. Oh, and we just heard the sound of the coho leaving. Yeah, I love that sound. It's a perfect fifth, I think. It's a C and a G chord. Like it's
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's not dissonant at all.
No,
Yeah,
it's almost like
yeah.
the sound of the Titanic, almost, right? It's like, it reminds me of that old boat. Maybe I should go on that one day.
Maybe, yeah, road trip, a sea
Yes.
trip. I feel like, is there a summation about scent? Because I alluded to it in the intro that,
Yeah.
it's one of our five senses. And certainly I know through my own life, I can be brought back to, like the scent of a certain food can bring me
Yeah.
comfort. The scent of, there are flowers that just, oh, like peonies the
Yeah.
smell of peonies at the beginning of July. But why? It's not a nice to have. It's an essential part of who our human technology is on Earth, I think. And I'm
Yeah.
just wondering, what is the importance of scent for, for humans,
Oh
for
God,
people?
it's so important, because if you connect with it, right? And if you don't connect, honestly, you can see. So we're so connected here with scent. Like, you get a smell you don't like, our facial expression shows it straight away. It's like, you know, we're so connected that if you connect with essence, it's like a mirror image of yourself, that it's mirroring you. That if you get that connection, you get that connection, and it's with you forever. But if you're not open to it, it will pass you by. And that's what I always say to people, like, please, all your old ways and visions of scent, put it aside and approach these essence like you're a 6-year-old child. You've got no interpretation of anything. You're inquisitive. You want to turn the stone and see what's underneath it. Don't dissect it. Don't put on your thinking cap and go, oh, I can smell, I hate patchouli, I instantly don't like that. Or don't dissect it. Approach it and be that child and see where it takes you. Close your eyes and see where it takes you. And see, does it evoke something in you? And if it takes you somewhere, take it by the hand and let it carry you, and see the magic, because that's what it does. It's magical. It's absolutely magical, and it's there for a reason. It's meant to do that, you know?
I do know, and you've been my teacher when it comes to scent. I mean, my husband's always said, I wish we could monetize your nose. I guess,
Yeah,
you
but
could,
you've got it.
but
No, you've got it, and you either have it or you don't, right?
yeah.
And it makes me sad for the people who don't, because they're missing something, but I'm sure they'll get something else somewhere else. But.
Yeah. Well, I love that you amplify beauty in the world. I do want to ask about books. I ask guests, every guest about this. And I don't know if you have a book or a couple of books you want to speak about that have meant something to you.
Yes,
Yeah.
because I read and write and read and write. That's what I do to inspire, right? Um, like I love Mitch Albom. Um, there's one book I love of his, Little Liar. I love the way he writes because he grabs my heart with it, and he always goes that bit deeper, right? He's spirit. He speaks spiritually a lot, and I love that about people when I hear spirit, because I always believe all of us have spirit, and that's the best part of us all. And sometimes our spirit gets clouded and you have to shine it up, and I always feel he takes me to spirit, right? um there's one book that as a young florist I read, and it has been with me all my life, and I gift my florists this book when I know that nature speaks to their heart. And it's called The Language of Flowers. It's a novel. It's by Vanessa Diffenbach, and it's a very beautiful novel. It's very raw, and she speaks of the florist, and uh, how we can speak through flowers to people, and how people, you know, as a florist, you're there to speak through the flowers to someone who's in pain, or someone who's celebrating her, and you have to understand the flowers in order to be able to interpret what that person needs right at that moment, who's in pain, who's at the most joyous part of their life. And this lady interprets that beautifully, and it's a book that I keep a stack of them. And not every florist gets it, I'll tell you that. I've had it through my life, but it's like the perfume, it's like the scent. Either a florist understands flowers or they don't, and you'll always tell through their work, because nature sings, right? It moves, it enchants. And if the flowers are formed like like where they just don't have that, you can see it, right? So there's either you're connected with nature or you're not, right? It's that simple. And this book definitely is one of those things, as a florist, that it speaks the language of flowers, and not in a cheesy way. It's really beautifully written. And then of course my perfume one is by the perfumer and knows Jean-Claude Elena, the which I'm sure I know you have that book. It's the Atlas of Perfume Botany, and that is the most beautifully written book on the essence of perfume ever in this land. I love the way he writes it.
Yeah, I do too. And you introduced me to that book in your shop, which carries books and flowers and scent and candles and pens and paper. Like at one point, you carried this little book I did, the My Garden Alphabet. Yeah,
Beautiful. I loved
yeah,
it. It was
yeah.
beautiful.
Well, very limited run. There'll be another book one day, and I'll
Yes,
let
there
you
will
know.
be.
Yeah, it has been just a delight to speak to you today. As yeah, I'm just so grateful our paths crossed and our spirits sung to each other. And yeah, just a heartfelt thank you. Whatever flower would say thank you, that's what I would be offering you.
Thank you, Kerry. It was I loved it too. It was beautiful.
Yeah, what a
Thank
wonderful
you.
story. Thank you. Thanks for listening. If you like the show, please tell your friends.